So the film What If It Works is about a guy called Adrian who is a tech nerd who loves fast cars, and he has a severe case of OCD, or Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. He goes crashing into his new neighbour Grace, who is a beautiful street artist, and she has multiple personality disorder, also known as dissociative identity disorder. And a very colourful, obstacle-filled love story ensues.
Where did the idea for this movie come from? Did it come from other movies or from personal experience?
Definitely not from other movies. Just in case you were wondering if it was Silver Linings Playbook, my script was written when that film came out.
Okay.
I was worried for a minute and then realised it's probably a slightly different market.
Okay.
The idea for the film is really a very personal story for me. So my brother has a very severe case of OCD. And has had so since I was about 5 years old. It's grown worse over the years. He's very limited and very much like Adrian in the film. So I guess it was a lifetime of unintended research that I was able to channel into the character of Adrian. And my aunt is a psychiatrist, and she specialises in patients with multiple personality disorder. So at the moment, for example, she would probably have, say, 30 or so patients with that disorder. I was able to get lots of literature and case studies, and I was really interested in this for years before I knew I was going to write a script. But once I decided I wanted to make a film about it, I was privileged enough to be able to sit in on therapy sessions with a few of her patients and actually get to know them and watch the process of switching from one part or persona to another, which I thought was super important in terms of being able to write a script that was authentic, but also to have the confidence to direct an actress in such a tricky role.
So Anna, describe the role that you play and how much preparation you did and how much of that came from Romi and how much was self-generated.
I play the character of Grace, and in the film you see 4 of her identities or parts. So Grace, G, Little and Spike are kind of who would be familiar with from the film. We spoke about the fact that she has many more, but we didn't really have enough screen time to show them all. So I first came across DID in my research for the audition before we met, when you just sent my agent the script, and I started to do my research, and then once Romi offered me the role, then we started doing some research together, and I spoke to your aunt in this very house, and I did quite a bit of reading. But I was saying before, it's a while ago now, it's kind of almost over 2 years since we've shot this, so I was casting my mind back to when we were doing it and what research I was doing and what work I was doing. And I remember I was also doing a play at the same time. I was doing a play at Melbourne Theatre Company, and I was doing this film, and I actually had no time at all, really. I was so overwhelmingly busy that I had no time to kind of second guess myself. I had no time to be over aware of what I was doing. I really had to hold on to the things Romi was giving me, and these pieces of research that she had, and these books, and her aunt, and I just held on to to my director quite firmly throughout the whole production, because it was so personal to Romi and she has so much experience in it that I trusted her experience to help me create someone who was completely authentic, that was never too large or a stereotype. So it was kind of a combination of us both. I remember the moment my character switches between her parts, that was a big thing that we workshopped together. In reflection, it was very much a joint creation of this woman you see on screen.
Are you saying that there was a danger of overthinking the role?
I think so. I do. I think when you are playing a character, or you are making a story about anyone who is in a stigmatized group or a marginalized group or a minority group, you need to have an extra awareness, but you also need to not overthink it and I can't play Grace thinking all the time I'm someone with a mental illness. That won't allow me to be the human on screen that I need to be. I have to trust that the writer has written something authentic and sensitive and true, and then hopefully I bring me to it. And I think that's why in some ways the film is successful, because it wasn't overthought, but it was very it was done with a lot of care and love.
Now, Romi, this is your first feature film.
Yeah.
And how many years of your life have you devoted to this film?
I have devoted 8 years to this film. Yeah.
Now, you're basically with this film trying to make a romantic comedy, the two leads of which suffering from mental illness. You mentioned Silver Linings Playbook,
Silver Linings Playbook.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You mentioned Silver Linings Playbook.
Shouldn't have.
Which is a big studio Hollywood production.
Yes.
Dealing with mental illness in any context, especially a comedy though, has got to be one of the most difficult balancing acts that a director can set for themselves.
Yep.
Why did you give yourself such a huge degree of difficulty with your first film? Was it a matter of just getting that personal story done and out and on screen so you could then do other things? Or was there something else at play?
I don't think I ever consciously thought this is one of the most challenging, stories that I could tell. This was a story I was passionate about, that I believed in, and I really don't think I was aware of what you're saying in terms of, why don't I go make a horror movie or something that's, might be a whole lot easier. I love stories that walk the comedy drama tightrope. It's very much the way I see stories, but it's also the way I see life. I'm somebody that goes through life and through difficult moments, growing up with mental illness, severe mental illness in my home. It wasn't always a dead drama, and it definitely wasn't straightforward comedy, but we did exist in a place where often we were experiencing a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety, a lot of upset. Maybe we were in tears, maybe we were ripping our hair out, and then we do a double take in a minute and suddenly note the absurdity of a particular moment. Next thing you know, me and Mum, and we're just laughing our heads off. And I think it's an important release to be able to have a laugh. And when you live with mental illness in your family, comedy and drama, they both arise. It happens. And my brother, who is very much like Adrian in the film, in that in his nature, he's bright and chirpy and loud and forthcoming and generous and witty. He's got a sense of humour, and even he has been able to have a laugh with us. And I think it's definitely a coping mechanism, and it's just the way I see stories like that. So for me, a story about two people with mental illness coming together and all of those obstacles, it authentically exists in a place of drama and comedy.
Now, this is a low-budget film. What is it like, as a first-time Australian film director, making a low-budget film? What compromises do you have to make? What are the benefits? What are the corners that you cut?
Oh my gosh, it's everyone knows.
Yes, and we do have another 2 hours now.
Yeah, okay, I'll deliver the seminar. Let me get out my notes.
It's so unfair. That is so unfair on you, because basically I've just given you your lecture series, and I'm going to give you like 3 minutes before we move on. But
describe low-budget filmmaking and its challenges. You've got 60 seconds. Go.
You give it to us in a nutshell.
So wow, okay. You never have enough money, obviously. You start out thinking you're going to make it for X amount, then it gets cut again. You've got to accommodate and allow for these cuts in the script. It's not easy forming a team when you're making a low budget film, because you want the best people, but you can't pay the best rates. So you've got to hope that people take the time to read the script, maybe connect with the material. You've got to look for people, I suppose, who are talented, who've had enough experience, but they still are hungry for an opportunity, and are willing to work perhaps really hard for a little bit less.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that the way that the financing for this film kind of slapped together affected the production schedule.
Yes, I certainly would have loved another week or two.
Right.
Why not?
Now, we know that these are part of the realities of filmmaking, but I would like you to give me a scenario that you would have preferred. Even working on a low budget, what would have been a better scenario so that you could just concentrate on making the film? Would it have been possible? Is it possible, and please Anna, chime in, because I know you have experience, is it possible to kind of, lock in, okay, this is our low budget. This is how much time we have to make it. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's sort of what happened to us in the end. Like, we weren't sure for a long time whether it was on, it was off, did we have the money, didn't we? And once we realised we did, we knew due to a few crew members that if we were going to do it, it had to be like quite soon. So once we sort of got the green light, it was bang, we need to get into sort of pre immediately. I think probably not having a lot of money meant that I did a lot of jobs that you wouldn't normally do as the director in the pre-production. So we did have somebody, for example, to help us with locations, but you know, the guy couldn't spend like 6 weeks driving around Melbourne doing nothing but looking for this bright, colourful painted laneway I needed with 2 houses opposite one another with a view from a kitchen to a front door.
You know what would have been good as well if we'd had enough funding that you could have taken the more than 3 days off when you had your back surgery. I've never seen someone work so hard as Romi on her own. You're so determined and you worked so hard, and I've never seen anyone do it quite like I saw Romi do that. And then halfway through shooting,
not halfway through, 8 days.
8 days.
What happened? You had back surgery while making the movie.
A disc. Unfortunately, I had a slightly dodgy back, but out of nowhere, a disc completely prolapsed into my spinal cord on day 8 of shooting. I was in pain for the first week, but I was
That's
like,
usually when you stop shooting for a while.
Yeah, I was like, I'll see the doctor at the end of the shoot. Well, he'll sort me out. I'm shooting, like, I'm not going to the doctor, I'm busy, you know.
We're going to make this
movie. Make this movie, whatever. So Panadeines weren't working too well. Disc prolapsed into spinal cord, and I was rushed into emergency spinal surgery on what should have been day 9 of the shoot. And the doctor told me I needed to go home for 3 to 6 months to recover, and I said, you don't get it. I'm making a low budget film. I'll lose my actors, I'll lose my locations. I can't reshoot that 8 days with different people in different places. It's been 8 years of my life. I need to get back to set. What can you do? And he just sort of said, look, I'm passionate about my work too. I understand the type of personality you have. I'll do the surgery in a particular way. We'll go through your stomach instead of through your back, and I can have you back there in 8 days. And I went, shake my hand on it, and we shook hands. I said, right, are we going to the hospital now? He's like, immediately. And he was a legendary, slightly crazy doctor who allowed me to actually get back to set after 8 days.
This basically reinforces the fact, does it not, that in order to be a filmmaker in this country, you have to be a little bit insane.
Oh. Mad. Yeah. Not a little bit. Completely mad.
Now, just as a digression, Proof Stenders,
yes,
who you know very, very intimately as a director, had a huge toothache when he was making Illustrated Family Doctor.
I didn't know that.
This now puts that, because I always thought, I always looked at that as what dedication he had. He had a toothache while making the movie, and he forged on.
Yeah.
You had back problems.
I know.
Wow.
I remember taking vitamins, like, I don't normally take vitamins. I remember taking them before the shoot thinking I should do that in case I get sick, because it'd be terrible to have a cold while shooting. That would make it really hard.
You directed me via Skype when you couldn't get out of bed.
Was that true? Is that true?
Half a day.
We
were doing some drone footage, which I felt like I could do from bed.
No, but I think most people would be like, someone else can do this. You're like, no. I need to be there.
I was on a bit of morphine, I'm not going to lie. So it worked out.
It's a beautiful shot. I know
it's a beautiful shot.
How are you Skyping on the mobile phone or on an iPad?
No, there's a way you can do it through the computer where I was actually hooked up to the camera, basically. And then I just had like the mobile phone. I was like, give me Anna, give me Luke, give me Ian Jones, give me... Yeah.
Please tell me that you've got a making of documentary.
I'm so sad to say I don't. And you know what? At the time, our lovely stills photographer was saying to me, sending me texts, let me come to the hospital, let me visit you, this is going to be great. I was in a pretty bad way in intensive care for a number of days, and I couldn't really think past the fact that I'd lost a few of my drag queens from a particular scene and needed to recast them. So I spent most of my time on the phone in a hospital working that out. I was like, I just can't, I don't think it's time for this.
It's just an absurd level of commitment.
That is extraordinary. Let's just address some serious questions about the film, and then Anna, I'd like to ask you some questions, and please feel free to chime in. What's the market for this movie? Did you aim for a market with this film?
I think that the market for this film, I mean, you know, you always want to say, oh, it's a love story and it transcends age and whatnot, and I actually believe that because I'm a filmmaker and we all like to believe that. But it's no, in all seriousness, from reactions I've seen at festivals, I expected the audience to be, you know, female skewed 20 to 35 or 18 to 35 because it's got a young aesthetic, we've got a hip soundtrack, you know, it's full of street art, the characters are reasonably young.
We're very cool.
We're
so cool.
Well, not me, but they're all very cool. But I've actually found that it has resonated and connected with much older audiences than I expected. And I expected it definitely to be more so females, but you know, there's been quite a few males that have come out with a tear in the eye and really moved by it. So I guess I anticipated a younger audience, but I found it's resonated with an older audience. And I suppose films that play at, you know, your Palace and your Como and your Nova and your Dendy and all of that sort of stuff, it usually is an older audience that goes to see the film. So yeah, I look forward to the responses.
It is a sweet film, and I think it'll play well to that demographic. This next question is a question that I often ask, and I'm going to stop asking it once it stops being a problem.
Okay.
But the marketing of this film, as you know, has been basically next to zero.
Yeah.
And whatever the future of Australian film is, it can't be that.
No.
Now, you know, The Wake in Fright was advertised on TV a month before it aired, which is what the model for film should be, but isn't.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me about the marketing aspects of this film?
So it's really tough convincing exhibitors to put an independent film in their cinema in place of an American film with a star, etc., that they know is less of a risk. It's as simple as that. Cinemas aren't wanting to take risks. As we know, everybody's consuming film and TV from home, on the couch, on Netflix and Amazon and Stan, etc. It's never been harder to get people into a cinema. And you ask exhibitors and they tell you the hardest market is actually the young market to get into the cinema. And the way they come in are with tentpole, huge films, massive special effects, Dunkirk, you know, I don't know, the Emoji Movie, or, you know, huge, that's a bad example, huge studio films with massive marketing and, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So even if you go to film festivals, which we've done and we've played well and we've won some awards, it tends not to mean very much to exhibitors when it comes to programming. So I think the first problem is the exhibitors' lack of interest in trying or helping the Australian films get a release, and that's really where it starts, because if you're only playing as we are in Melbourne and Sydney, as soon as you go to, you know, most publications or networks, nobody really wants to talk about the film unless you're in every state in Australia, because it's not of interest to most of the country, even if you're releasing online, which we will be, and on DVD.
You also did some things that I think you kept it authentic to you that maybe would have helped the film get more attention, but you didn't want to go down that route. I'm kind of talking about casting me, because I wasn't known at all.
That's true.
In the film and TV world when I got this gig. I was doing a lot of theatre, and that was my whole background, and people were suggesting actresses of higher status at that point in time to you, and you said that you wanted to audition and you wanted someone right for the role, not someone who was a big name. And I think that made it harder for you. I think it was great for me.
And I know that Anna was the perfect person for the job. When I saw her test, I had a gut feeling, and I was like, she's going to kill this. She's got the range, she's got the intelligence. I didn't know how much I'd love her and connect with her. But yeah, maybe that's a mistake, not putting a name in there. Although I don't really think, if you put an Australian actress that's a little bit better known, I still don't think you get guarantees of getting into a cinema or bums on seats.
Let's just be very, very clear about this.
Yeah.
You had the option of putting a much better known actress in that role, and as a result of that, you could have attracted more publicity, more marketing, more attention.
Can I tell you why I didn't do it? The kind of actress that we would have needed to possibly guarantee more marketing and more interest was the kind of actress who I would not have been able to audition. They would have wanted to be offered the role. And when I heard that, I was like, there is no way I'm offering a role as complex and challenging as this to somebody without an audition.
Putting them through their paces.
Yeah,
Those
like
auditions were massive.
yeah, massive. But they needed to be. I needed to see that Anna could do Spike, G, Little, Grace, all of those. The range is huge. It's a tremendously challenging role, and I didn't feel comfortable just offering it to somebody. I thought they could turn up here from the States. They could give me the first day, and I could think, what the F have I done?
Well, you had no idea I was going to ask this, and you're probably unaware of my standard Chevry challenge question, which
I'm unaware.
which is coming up, but you kind of have already answered it anyway.
Okay.
But the scenario is, I'm a studio executive from the States, seen your little film, love it, it's adorable, but I want you to change something. I want you to recast the lead role with someone we think is really hot and who we can sell. I can give you a huge exposure across America, but I want you to basically remake the film with everybody else. We love Anna, we think she's going places, but we want you to recast the main role and reshoot it. And the deal is you get a big exposure in America. I'm pretty sure what your answer is going to be.
I'm keeping Anna.
No, you keep Anna,
Oh, you
but
get
you
Anna
lose.
anyway.
I get
No,
to
you
do it
keep
again.
Anna,
Okay.
but you lose Luke.
We're gonna keep.
I lose Luke.
You lose
Not
Luke.
lose Luke.
I'm offering you a deal as a studio exec.
It's like my children. You ask me which one to choose.
Well, that's the deal. We want you to remake the movie. We might even re-release this film on the
This
DVD
one.
special edition.
Yeah.
But we want you to remake it, but
Wow.
with this star
Wow.
who we've got.
That happens all the time, doesn't it? Those kind of things. Yeah.
Usually it's maybe from one language to another. Like we should be in Sweden or Germany if I was getting this request. It's a little bit strange from Australia.
It's great.
Although The Office was remade, I suppose, and that's in English. But
Oh,
tangent.
What would you do in that
I would
scenario?
say who is the actor is what I would say because it would depend.
It's some young, someone of comparable age, but someone who it's not negotiable. You've got to take him. He's been in a couple of hit American comedies. He wants to do something more dramatic. He wants to prove he's got range.
He can be in your next film.
Is
Let's
it
keep this
Ryan
one.
Gosling?
I know it's not. It's too expensive.
Well, then it's a no.
No, it's someone who's up and coming.
It's Ryan Gosling or no one.
If it's Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling, maybe. I'll think about Bradley Cooper.
So good.
Okay, but you wouldn't go anywhere else with that. You'd say
I'd need
no.
to think a little bit longer.
Okay,
If it was
okay.
in Spanish, maybe Gael Garcia Bernal.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You said he's short.
Yeah, we'd work through that.
There's-
He's quite tall.
there's
Work
never-
through it.
There's never a right or wrong answer with this scenario, by the way. But that's a pretty. I mean, apart from working while you had back problems, so I mean, obviously, it would be career suicide for you to dare even hint at who you could have gone for. But
Correct.
yeah, so there's no point pressing you, even though I'm tempted to. But that's a pretty powerful statement about artistic integrity, which everybody always jokes about. But when you're putting in 8 years into a film, I imagine it's probably not that difficult a decision to make.
Yeah, I felt I had to go with the truly right person for this role. So, yeah, maybe it has affected what we've been able to do marketing wise, but.
Now, Anna, just tell us a bit about the performance that you've put in this film. Everyone was screaming to the heavens about how wonderful James McAvoy was in the movie Split.
Oh.
I actually reckon what you do in this film is more impressive because it's more subtle.
That's a lovely thing to say, so thank you.
And you know I'm not just saying it.
I do. I definitely get that vibe from you. I watched Split when it came out, and what I thought was scary about Split is that it metaphorically and then literally portrayed the man as a monster, which for an already very stigmatized illness, it was doing no good at all. But the subtlety of, well, how I thought about Grace and her DID wasn't so much that I was playing 4 different characters, it's that parts of herself came to the forefront when she needed them. Because if we make it really like basic and say she has kind of her first identity being Grace, and then G, who's overtly sexual, very physical, very provocative. Then you have Little, who is 6 in the movie. She's recently grown up to 6. She's a little girl with all the innocence and playfulness and outspokenness of a child. And then you have Spike, who's more full of aggression and more full of aggression and a masculinity, I guess, and anger, a brutalness. I think it's a wounded anger. I don't just think it's anger. I think it's a wound. We, as humans, have all that in us. We do have those different parts to us. And I think what I was trying to do is just to really bring one of them to the forefront and physicalize it, let it change the voice, let it change the way you look at the world, let it change the way you move through space each time, rather than breaking them into different characters, because they're all part of this one human that I was playing. And that was important. I think it was important because it felt authentic and it felt real, and it's certainly the direction that you wanted to go in. Yeah.
What did you get out of the performance?
How do you mean?
Out of this performance. As an actress, you go through this journey of playing this character. At the end of it, is there a takeaway for you?
Well, I never really had the experience of doing a lead in a feature and then sitting down and watching it, ever. Because I'd been doing theatre. You don't get to watch yourself, thank goodness. But I'm incredibly fond of this film. It means a lot to me. It's very close to my heart. I feel really lucky to be part of something that actually does some good. Because so often you just get roles and you just do your bit and it's kind of end of the story. But this actually is trying to destigmatize mental health. It's trying to say to people that if your love story is a little different, a little odd, not like the movies, then that's okay. And for me, that personally feels really good to be part of something with a good heart.
How did you get the role in Wake and Fright?
I auditioned, and originally that character was written quite physically different to myself. It was written as a bigger woman, a woman that you can imagine very easily in that world, a woman whose physicality it speaks of a domineering character. And I didn't have that, and I think I walked into the audition and I think I made a bit of like a bold choice with how I presented Mickey, and our wonderful director took a chance on me. I think that's what he did, much like Romi.
So you played against the size idea. Idea of the small, angry, scary dynamo.
Yeah, I kind of had to play against what was kind of given to me, because it wasn't a woman who looked like me or spoke like me, and I had to find my way in. And often I think the scariest people are the calmest and the stillest. Obviously, she's not always calm and still. She was a fighter, so she was someone who was always ready to fight if she had to. And I don't think that's always loud aggression. I think sometimes that's just in the way you stand, the way you read the room, behind your eyes. So I went in with those choices. I also had to kind of occify my voice because I've got a bit of a British accent. So I had to get rid of my normal voice, and I went in, and for film and TV often it's really scary to go in with this big, bold kind of theatrical choice. It's a bit scary, but that was the only way I was going to ever be considered for a role like that. She's like covered in tattoos and she's nasty and she's fantastic. So I had to go big or go home. And I'm just really lucky that our beautiful director decided that he wanted to take a chance on me.
Well, it's a great performance, and it is completely scary.
Oh, good.
I mean, absolutely scary.
Oh, good. I'm glad I frightened you.
And, well, yeah, and what do you think that role is going to do for you?
I don't know. I guess I haven't really thought about it. I'm always attracted to roles where I can explore, I guess, some darkness or some damage or all the shades of being a human. I'm maybe not interested in the most stereotypical roles for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed actress. I don't know. I just like what I like.
Where does it come from? What are you drawing on?
In myself?
Yeah.
For roles like that?
Well, for that role in particular. I mean, let's be absolutely honest.
Yeah.
Basically, what you do to the male character in that film is that you castrate him.
Yeah. She's even holding a knife, which is
it's believe me. Yeah, no, believe me. An actor twice your size, I don't think it would have worked. It's because you're small, and probably because you can get into those small, tight areas with a knife.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the sexuality violence kind of that sits there. Like, there's this one line that she has to John Grant where he's like, "I don't want to shoot a gun," and she just smiles at him and says, yeah, you do. It's like, go on, I dare ya. And I don't know where I get that from. I'm not like that at all in real life, but I'm really interested in playing those secondary emotions, like anger. What does that come from? I think anger comes from fear. And if I was to really dig deep, which we kind of had to, certainly in the second episode of Wake and Fright, you find out where these characters come from. Beneath anger is often fear, and often sadness, and often desperation. So I'm always interested in how those really deep emotions that make us who we are, how they have secondary effects, and they make us violent, they make us angry, or they make us sexual, or whatever it is.
And are you deliberately moving from theatre to more film stuff? Is that what you want to do?
Look, I kind of didn't have a plan. I just love acting very much, and I love being an actor, and I was just in the theatre world since I was very young, and it's all I wanted to do, and I was completely besotted with the whole idea of being involved in theatre since I was tiny. And then I've had a great career in theatre, and I love it, and I'm doing theatre again next year. But I made moves into film and TV kind of in the last 3 years, and I've been really lucky in the projects that I've landed in. I've been in these kind of one-off, amazingly written, great female characters. So yes and no. I think it makes sense for an actor to move into screen sometimes, certainly for myself, because I want to do this for a long time, and I want to be able to eat. So one theatre gig a year, probably not going to do it. But I'm back on stage next year, which I'm so looking forward to.
And what are you doing next before the cameras?
I just wrapped a week ago on Dead Lucky for SBS, which is a 4-part miniseries. Rachel Griffiths plays a detective, and I play her junior. I was thinking the other day that you get to a point in your career, kind of without noticing it, where you've worked with your idols, where you've worked with people like Rachel Griffiths, and you've worked with David Wenham, and you start being like, oh, that's cool. And you get a bit starstruck by people you're in scenes with, and then you try not to tell them, but you obviously look like a bit of a dorky fan.
The whole gender equality issue, which seems to be infiltrating every single aspect of life at the moment. Have you guys had any experiences about that? Have you felt the gender issue ever impede or get in the way of your work?
Me first?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I actually feel I've been reasonably lucky, I think, in my process with the feature film. I was fortunate enough to have Tristram Mile, who of course we know is a producer of films like Strictly Ballroom and The Black Balloon. He came on at a very early stage, and he was a fantastic mentor and support and creative producer to have on board. So I felt like actually with Trist by my side, even though it was bloody hard, I actually didn't feel like I was encountering those problems. That said, when certain decisions were made behind closed doors about whether or not I got funding, or whether or not a particular distributor or agent did or did not want to come on board, who knows?
Anna, have you sensed anything at all?
In my career, yes and no. I think there is a massive inequality between the genders. I think I'm a very outspoken feminist, and I write a lot of essays about what it is to be a young woman living today, that I then get published online and no one reads them, but I feel good because I wrote them. In my career, I think I've been very lucky. I've got a lot of work, and I'm still doing it, and people seem to hire me, and it hasn't in any way, I don't think my gender's been a setback on my career trajectory. But I do think that there's still a long way to go before it feels like women are taken as seriously as men within the film and television industry. Maybe not so much on the acting front, but as directors, writers, we need more. We need more female stories told. We need more female stories funded. We need more female stories seen.
And written.
And written. But I also think that there should be the freedom to allow female directors to direct stories that are not necessarily stories about women. Because men direct stories about women too. So I know that people sort of focused on the female story, which I think is very important. But like, I'd like to work in TV, and I'd like to be given the opportunity to also take on a male-driven series. Yeah, I want to direct the next emoji movie. It's not about anyone. It's just emojis.